Welcome to Spectrum Sundays. I am Francesca D'Alessandro, Miss Thousand Islands of New York, serving my community through AAA appreciation and awareness for autism. I am also a speech-language pathologist with a master's degree from the University at Buffalo.
And I am Megan Sinisi, Miss Pennsylvania 2021 and the founder of a nonprofit organization for autism titled From a New Perspective. I am also a speech-language pathologist with a master's degree from the University of Missouri.
Everyone deserves to feel accepted and included in every space that they walk in. Our series aims to inspire you to advocate for yourself and on behalf of your loved ones. And we are so grateful that you're here with us today.
Emma Broyles is a junior at Barrett, the Honors College at Arizona State University, where she studies biomedical sciences and voice performance with a dream of becoming a dermatologist. Emma currently holds the title of Miss Alaska 2021, and she will compete in the 100th anniversary of Miss America this December. As a sibling of an individual with an intellectual disability and as the daughter of a special education teacher, Emma became an advocate for people with intellectual disabilities at a very young age. Her involvement with Special Olympics began when she was just 7 years old, and since then, she has been a coach and a president of the largest Special Olympics program in Alaska, and has helped develop lifelong supporters of Special Olympics. Thank you again, Emma, for coming back with us to Spectrum Sundays. We're excited to dig deeper into your journey as Miss Alaska and all of your advocacy work, but also to get to know you a little bit. So we wanted to start off by asking, who has had the greatest impact on your advocacy journey and how have they helped shape your mission as Miss Alaska?
Yeah, so my older brother Brendan has Down syndrome, and he is the whole reason that I first got involved with Special Olympics, so many years ago. And it was kind of interesting because I feel like I've thought about this a lot. And when I grew up, I kind of grew up in this little bubble, my mom being a special education teacher and my brother having an intellectual disability. That was just kind of the norm for me. I didn't realize that that wasn't really the norm for anyone else. And as I got a little bit older and I kind of realized the cruelty in the world, it really kind of struck me. And I very vividly remember my mom explaining to me what would happen with babies and children with intellectual disabilities when they were born back in the day and how they would have been sent to camps, they would have been sent away. And I just couldn't imagine that somebody would do that, to their own kid, to their own family member. And that's kind of the moment when I realized that I needed to do everything that I possibly could to be an advocate and to speak up for the rights and the inclusion of people with intellectual disabilities, including my brother, because I wanted to make sure that there would be a good world for them someday and for people with intellectual disabilities to come.
That's really incredible. And I was going to ask a follow-up question about how your mom has really helped shape your life, because we talked a lot about being a sibling with someone with an intellectual disability, but having a parent who has a 9 to 5 job of being a teacher, but also coming home and being a teacher again, how has that helped grow you even more so with your advocacy?
Yeah, so my mom's story is pretty interesting. So she was first a Special Olympics figure skating coach way back in the day, before she had me and my brothers. And she had just always been involved with Special Olympics, even emceeing, the Special Olympics World Games when they were held in Alaska in 2001. And she then became a special education teacher. She worked up in Fairbanks, Alaska for quite a while. And that's when she had my oldest sibling, my older brother, Brendan. And it just kind of happened to be a coincidence that she ended up having, a child with Down syndrome after being involved with Special Olympics for so long. At that point, she was on the governor's council on disabilities and special education. And so she really got to do a lot of advocacy work in that sense. And it was kind of fun because she would take my brother was pretty young at the time that she was on the council, and she would take him and dress him up in a little tuxedo, and she made him little business cards, and she would take him to all of the meetings and have him speak with her. And she has some really, really interesting stories and had some cool experiences doing that. And she even met I don't know if you're familiar with Sarah Palin.
Yes.
Yeah, and Sarah Palin actually has a son with Down syndrome, and so I remember, I think like my mom and Sarah Palin had kind of talked about that experience, what it's like having a kid with an intellectual disability. And so, my mom being there in my life has been such an important part of me eventually becoming an advocate for people with intellectual disabilities. And I feel like she really keeps me grounded, and she's really taught me a lot about keeping an open mind and an open heart, and just learning to do everything that I possibly can for those who may not be able to do it for themselves. So yeah, I think my mom has definitely been a big reason that I am where I am today.
We absolutely love to hear that. And it sounds like your advocacy, it kind of fell into your lap, but your family was meant to do this. And so fortunately, your mom had so much involvement that I'm sure that her being a special education teacher, but also her involvement really helped prepare her for the role as a mother of a child with an intellectual disability. So it's amazing to hear your story. And that's what we really love about Spectrum Sundays, is that we get to amplify these stories and help other people understand whether they also have those same circumstances in their own home, or if they're just wanting to learn a little bit more about disabilities. So we hope that these stories can inspire others to kind of take on this mission of uplifting the disability community. So how would you suggest someone without a disability or doesn't have a family member with a disability, how can they get involved in uplifting and taking on this mission of being an advocate?
Yeah, so as you were saying, I've really found that once people have the chance to really connect with and get to know somebody with an intellectual disability, their viewpoint completely changes. And they become a little bit more open minded and empathetic to others. And I think that exactly what you said, even if it's not you personally being there with somebody with an intellectual disability and having a conversation face to face. It could be watching a video about somebody else sharing their story and sharing their experience that kind of allows you to take a step back and think, wow, I can't believe that I've never even heard of something like this before, and I didn't even know that this was happening. And so I think that the best way to gain this type of outreach is through social media. So similarly to what you were doing with this incredible podcast, I've been working to interview volunteers and athletes in the Special Olympics program in a series called Champion Chats, and essentially sharing their stories and their involvement with Special Olympics and why Special Olympics is so important to them. That way I can kind of expand the outreach of Special Olympics and its mission. And I think that a great example of this kind of open-mindedness that you gain through hearing someone else's story is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the show Special Books by Special Kids. It's a
Yeah,
pretty popular show. Yeah, and this guy, I think his name is it Chris?
I think
Um, yeah, he's awesome. And I remember I used to watch those videos all the time growing up. And he essentially does the same thing. And he interviews people with intellectual disabilities and allows them to kind of share their story and lets other people see a side to them that they may not have seen if they were just walking by them on the street. And I thought that that was such a significant series that I knew that I wanted to do something similar. And so whenever I am home, I'm able to do some interviews and things like that with people with intellectual disabilities who are involved with Special Olympics to hopefully share that outreach. But yeah, I think that that's really one of the most important ways that we can kind of inspire people who aren't involved in this community.
I completely agree. And I believe Megan said on this series before too that sometimes the disconnect between communities is not because of hate or dislike, it's just because of lack of exposure. So that's
Yeah.
why social media also plays such a huge role in creating that exposure and opportunity to learn and for education. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit more onto you as a person. So you mentioned before that you're a voice performance major, is it?
Yes. Or no,
And so
actually, I have a voice performance minor, but I'm
okay, I
still.
was also a voice performance minor
Oh, that's
during my
awesome.
undergrad. So I know how busy it can be, especially with a more science-based, uh, like other side to you. Like when you are doing both very hard technical science classes, and then you're doing completely crazy voice things, like in the same day. So I know how busy and crazy it can be. So during your year as Miss Alaska, you're also a student managing all of these different responsibilities and hats. So how do you balance all of that and continue to make an impact through your social impact initiative?
Yeah, honestly, one of the most important things for me has been kind of relying on and leaning on my calendar app and my notes app and my phone. I have really relied on those two things throughout my year, not just this year, but I mean, anytime I've been pretty busy in the past, just to kind of make sure that I'm staying organized and staying on top of my tasks. But I really like being busy because it keeps me moving, and I get to have so many fulfilling experiences at once. And although it does, sometimes feel overwhelming, I always make sure to take a break, set aside a day for myself or at least a little bit of time in which I can unwind. But yeah, another interesting aspect about my life right now is kind of balancing being Miss Alaska without actually living in Alaska at the moment, since I'm at school in Arizona for a majority of the year. And so something that I've been doing is traveling back to Alaska. So right now I'm on one of my trips back to Alaska. And when I come home, I basically just plan out every single day and cram them full with events. And it's actually a lot of fun because I get to put on my sparkly hat and go around town, meet new people, shake hands, kiss some babies. And actually, earlier today, I was just at one of our local high schools in Anchorage, Diamond High School, and I got to speak to their partners club there, so their Special Olympics school program, and it was really, really neat to see. I got to talk to the teacher who is leading the Partners Club over there, as well as some of the students who are on the board for Partners Club. And it was a really cool experience getting to witness all of the great things that they're still doing in Partners Club. And I am currently working on a tour of Partners Clubs within the Anchorage School District. So on Tuesday, I'm visiting a few other Partners Clubs. And then also while I'm here, I try to do a lot of filming, especially with the Champion Chat series, doing as many interviews as I can. That way I have content, so when I'm back in Arizona and I may not be able to attend events in person, I can be editing and distributing that content so I can keep my social impact initiative active. And I think that another important thing that the pandemic brought to us was exactly what we're doing right now, the ability to do things virtually. And so it's really neat that I can use social media and the internet as a tool to still spread my social impact initiative and to still spread my message as Miss Alaska without actually having to be somewhere in person. I mean, I think it's so crazy that we can be filming a podcast and an interview right now from literally opposite ends of the United States. I think that's so cool, and that's such a great tool for us in this day and age.
Absolutely. We have been so blessed with this platform and Zoom communication because, that's how Spectrum Sundays really started at the start of the pandemic. Fran and I knew that everything would be shut down, and we wanted to still make an impact somehow, some way. So since then, you're number 81, our 81st episode. So
wow, 81 episodes. That is absolutely mind blowing.
Thank you. But we've just been so blessed because of the connections that we've been able to make all over the world. And it never would have happened otherwise if we weren't first forced to go into this virtual world. And that's what I admire so much about Miss America candidates all across the states, because we're so innovative. And just listening to how you coordinate your schedules and how you optimize your time in Alaska while juggling your responsibilities as a student. We have a few different candidates that are doing similar things. We just mentioned about Miss New Mexico and Miss Michigan having a very similar story to you, where they're serving in one state, but then attending school in another. And I think that just goes to show how amazing Miss America candidates are and how they are literally ready to take on the world no matter what is thrown at them. So kudos to you. I'm just so impressed by everything you're able to do and just getting so creative so that you can make an impact. And I'm sure that you do things in Arizona as well. And I'm guessing that your talent is vocal performance.
Yes.
So then you continuously get to practice your talent as well. So kudos to you. But I also wanted to bring it back to a question that we covered a little bit earlier, a topic that we covered earlier, which was attitudes that people have about those with disabilities. So what's your suggestion for how society can start changing those attitudes, or on a broad scale, how can we start to break down misconceptions about disabilities?
Yeah, so something that was really important that you had mentioned earlier is that people aren't necessarily feeling any hatred or negative feelings toward people with intellectual disabilities. They simply have not had that exposure yet, and they don't quite understand what goes on inside this community and what goes on, in the life of somebody with an intellectual disability. And so I think that it's really important that we're able to get that exposure and that we're able to kind of make those connections, even if they're not, personable, because it's not like, and every day you're able to just meet somebody from a different community and have, a deep conversation with them and really get to know them. But social media is such an incredible tool that really allows us to share these stories and kind of make those connections without actually having to meet face to face. And so I think that that's one of the best ways that we can kind of help society change their attitudes toward people with intellectual disabilities.
Right. And I think what you're doing with focusing on the younger crowd is a great way to do that, because they are still forming their own ideas and attitudes about the world. And a large misconception, I feel, is that people look at disability and automatically have sympathy for them or pity for them. And you have certainly drove home that word of empathy rather than sympathy. So I think
Yeah.
that that's amazing that you're taking charge of that, and that we can really start to shift the attitudes, so that we don't look at people with disabilities or intellectual and developmental disabilities as being less than or disadvantaged, but rather having a whole different set of skills that they can thrive through as well, and that they can positively contribute to the world.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that one of the main misconceptions about people with intellectual disabilities is that they aren't able to be active members of society, which that's just not true. That's just a misconception that is not true. I think it's important for people to understand that people with intellectual disabilities, I mean, they can have jobs, they can drive, they can go to college, they can have families, get married, whatever. My brother has actually been able to have multiple jobs throughout the years, and he's currently in a post-secondary educational program for people with intellectual disabilities here in Alaska. And I think that so many of these stereotypes can be eliminated by just encouraging our society to focus on ability over disability. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we should, like Megan said, and like you mentioned earlier, just focus on the strengths that each person brings to the table instead of focusing on what they might be having challenges with, or just assume that they will have challenges with certain things. And I don't know if you feel comfortable sharing maybe a stereotype or a misconception that your brother has personally faced, and how you as a family have worked to overcome that.
Yeah, I think that I've actually, a lot of people have asked me in the past, what what's going to happen to your brother in the future. What's going to happen when you and your other brother are out of college, you moved out of the house, like what is Brennan going to do? And I think that people don't really understand that there are so many resources for him. So Brendan is likely going to live in a group home once he gets older. He's not going to be living with my parents forever, because my parents are eventually going to probably want to move somewhere else, get a house that's a little bit smaller than the one we have right now. And within that group home, Brendan will be living alongside other guys with intellectual disabilities. And they'll have an adult there who doesn't have an intellectual disability, who kind of is there as a chaperone. And in these group homes, they'll go shopping, they'll get their groceries, they'll all have jobs, they'll be having their own source of income. They'll go to the gym, they'll go for walks, they'll go do things out in their community, they'll stay involved in Special Olympics. And so in these group homes, they are able to be independent, but they still have somebody there who can kind of guide them when they need it. And I think that that's a really common misconception, is that people with intellectual disabilities just live with their parents forever. And then what happens when their parent dies? They're going to, live with their siblings or something. But yeah, these group homes are incredible resources. And I think a lot of people don't actually know about them.
Yes, and
Right.
it's so great to hear you share more about that, because it's almost like its own little community, and that really gives them the opportunity, like you said, to reach independence at a level that otherwise they might not have experienced. And there are, of course, people with disabilities that will need a little bit more support and more guidance, but just the fact that that's available to them and that they can be as independent or rely on that assistance that's available is just amazing. And I'm so much looking forward to how Brendan grows and continuing to watch how you share his story and the ways that he contributes and lives a life that he always has imagined for himself. And I'm sure you have all imagined for him too. So thank you for sharing that. We wanted to shift into our rapid fire round. So this is meant to just be kind of a fun get to know you section. And we just want to get to know your personality a little bit. So
Yeah.
let's do it. So what is your favorite part of the Miss America competition?
Definitely talent, especially watching Miss America competitions. I like watching talent, and I also like performing talent the most.
And who is a sponsor that you would like to give a shout out to?
I would like to give a big shout out to Regalia Magnificent Apparel in Orlando, Florida. They helped put together my evening gown for Miss America, and I am so incredibly grateful for their sponsorship because I have an awesome gown now, and I'm really looking forward to sharing it on the Miss America stage.
Oh, I'm so excited for you. Evening gown is one of the most elegant and graceful parts of the Miss America competition, and we're all so excited that it's coming back
Mm-hmm.
and that we all get to represent whichever company or brand that we choose. But Regalia is amazing. I also went down in Orlando
Oh,
when we were there for Miss America's Outstanding Teen, so they're amazing.
oh,
I
I'm so excited to see your gown. I'm so excited to see all of the gowns. That's probably my second favorite portion of competition other than talent.
Absolutely. Well, can't wait to see yours either. I know that you're going to be dazzling, but can't wait. So, what is something that you cannot live without?
Okay, this is kind of embarrassing, but I do still sleep with my blankie from when I was born. It's actually in my bed right now. So I would say that I can't live without my blankie.
I love that. I had a friend in college who had this Sesame Street Big Bird that she took with her everywhere. And then I also have a little bear that I
Oh.
slept with for like 10 years. I take it everywhere with me.
Yeah, it's so nice to have something like that, a little piece of your childhood.
Yeah, that's so cute. Okay, so would you rather dress up or dress down?
Oh, this is such a hard question. I think I would say dress down because a majority of the time I'm too lazy to dress up. But I will say that if I have an exam or if I have something coming up where I know that I need a little bit of an ego boost, then I will dress up because I swear I always feel so much more confident and ready to take on an exam or to take on an interview if I am dressed to the nines.
I love it. Yeah, they say dress for the job that you want, not the job that you have. But I
Yeah.
totally share your sentiment about just being an athleisure most of the time. What is your favorite place to visit in Alaska?
My favorite place to visit is Seward, Alaska, which is about 3 hours south from Anchorage, where I live. And the fishing in Seward is awesome. I always go to Seward over the summers with my parents, and we bring out our little motorhome and we go fishing. Also, the Kenai River is another great place to go fishing. We'll take our motorhome down there and camp out for a few nights and catch as many salmon as we possibly can.
I love it.
That's great. And I wanted to ask you this question earlier, but this is the perfect time to ask you. So we mentioned in your introduction that you are becoming a dermatologist. And for our viewers who can't see your gorgeous face, your skin is glowing. So I want to know, what is a go-to item that you highly recommend?
Thank you. That is so sweet. My go-to item are any type of hydrocolloid bandage or the Mighty Patch. So I have dermatillomania and I have a hard time with trying to not pick at my skin. So hydrocolloid bandages are my lifesaver because they keep the spot covered up and I can't touch it. And they also are like magic. Their healing powers are amazing. I don't know what they put in those things, but they work really well.
That's awesome. I'll look them up. Because I haven't heard of the second one. You said the Mighty Patch?
Yeah, so the Mighty Patch are the
Okay.
tiny little circular bandages, and I think that
Yeah.
they have some other type of medication in there that kind of help get rid of the zit. But I mean, I'll have like a horrible zit, and it'll pop a little patch on there, and it's gone. I don't know how they do that.
Well, I know who I'll be going to during Miss America week if I have any trouble with my skin.
I always have hydrocolloid bandages on me. Don't worry, I got you.
And lastly, who is the person you would like to give a shout out to?
Okay, this is hard because I would say both of my parents. I know you asked for one person, but I can't really choose between my parents. My parents have been my biggest supporters, especially throughout this journey. And even just this morning, I needed a chaperone for my event when I went to the Diamond Partners Club. And my dad came with me, and I gave him my phone because I needed him to take some pictures. And he's not like super tech savvy. So he did his best, but he got some great pictures, and I'm so grateful that they're so willing to support me in everything that I do and sit through so many boring swim meets, choir recitals, voice competitions, and anytime I did a play, they would go to every single show. And there were like 6 shows, and they would go to every single one. So I'm so incredibly grateful that they're that willing to sit through all of my somewhat boring events.
Oh, that is so sweet. And I'm sure they're so proud of you, and there will be more events to come as well. Well, thank you once again for visiting with us, Emma, on Spectrum Sundays. And if you enjoyed this episode and would like to learn more about her year of service as Miss Alaska, you can find her on Instagram and Facebook at Miss America AK. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next Sunday.
Thank you for listening to Spectrum Sundays. We are your hosts, Francesca D'Alessandro, Miss Thousand Islands.
And Miss Pennsylvania, Megan Sinisi. Please make sure to subscribe to our series and follow us on social media to stay connected to autism professionals and self-advocates.
And remember, true impact is accomplished through active listening and exploring the world through a variety of perspectives.
Join us next week on Spectrum Sundays to help cultivate a community of inclusion, appreciation, and acceptance around autism.